I'm in Hinton St Mary in Dorset, and I'm tracing some Roman history and also the Anglo-Saxon boundary. Dorset is very pretty. These beautiful old stone villages. That was the manor back there, which belonged to Peter Rivers, a very famous archaeologist. 1 foot on either side of the divide between antiquarianism and modern archaeology. But I'm in search of, see whether or not visiting the place and having a look at the old charters will give us some insight into the place. So what am I doing here? Well, the last week, Wednesday evening, I went along to the Bath and Camerton Archaeological Society talk, and there's a chap there, I'll put his name in here, I've forgotten it, I'll put his name in here. He did a talk on the Hinton St Mary Roman mosaic, which is probably one of the most important and most beautiful mosaics in Britain. It's in the British Museum. It's no longer there. But what more can we say about all of the talk was all about that location and what it meant. Is there anything more that we can say around? I mean, people like me are really interested in the parish. What is the land around it, and how? So if that was a settlement or a villa or something really important in the landscape, what was it in the landscape that supported it? So I'm here to have a look. I asked him whether there was an Anglo-Saxon charter. He said there must be somewhere, so perhaps I can make a contribution to this discussion. The day before yesterday I looked it up, I translated it as much as I could yesterday, and there's some interesting parts to it that perhaps may help some sort of insight into, you may ask yourself, what's the point looking at Anglo-Saxon stuff when that's sort of like 400, 500 years later? And that's true, but even documents like the Tithe award, which I looked at yesterday, has Anglo-Saxon names in it. So there's a field called Steat, which means tongue, and it's a piece of land that is tongue-shaped next to a river. But anyway, we'll get on to more about that in a minute. I was going to set up some objectives for this walk. I'm looking for a bridge called the Bridge, which is in the Anglo-Saxon charter, and it literally means the Oxen's Bridge. It's the only the charter talks of a bridge over the River Stour, and there is only one path. This is a pathway now, but from the Tithe award map you can see that it used to be a road, and we found our bridge. Obviously it's not an Anglo-Saxon bridge, but it may very well be medieval or post-medieval. I mean, there's some concrete on top, but I was just looking at it on the way over. I'll do some shots of it. I think we found our Bridge. But how do we know How do we know that this charter actually matches, that it is actually describing this place and not another? Because it is, after all, about the village of Hamtuna, and this place is called Hinton St Mary. So there's loads of settlements along the Stour. How do we know that this charter relates to this particular, to Hinton? Well, the reason for that is that on the other side of the boundary there's a Chivit Riff stream, and in the charter what should be over the other side of the boundary is something called a Chivit Yet Moor, which could be a pond, could be wasteland. Let's go and have a look. It's here that I leave the Stour. I'm not going to follow the boundary because the footpath doesn't follow the boundary, but what I am going to do, there's a boundary stone, a BS marks on the map. I want to go and, almost definitely a parish boundary stone. God knows how, these boundaries have been maintained for 1500 years, so it doesn't mean it's ancient, but let's go and have a look, see if we can find it. It's on the main road, so I'm going to walk up there. This is an old parish boundary stone. It's got no inscription on it. It does look old. It does look rough and ready. It doesn't look like anything from the modern period. I must admit, I've had a bit of a Spinal Tap moment. I was expecting a megalith. Never mind. But it's small but perfectly formed. So we're back to the village. We're not far from where I parked the car. This village is important. It was built on top of something really important in Roman times. It has a world-class mosaic underneath it that's in the British Museum. It's been taken to the British Museum. It was an important place, but we know nothing about it. Very little. There's some artistic and historical interpretation of the mosaic. During the talk, the archaeologist was saying, we're not sure this was Jesus, even though there was a great big chi rho behind his head, and I was raving inside my head, going, no, of course it is. It quacks, it's got webbed feet, it likes water, it's a duck. But what was interesting, he showed a picture of a statue of Constantine, the Emperor Constantine, and he's got a cleft chin and the same hairstyle just as the figure in the mosaic.
And who was this figure? Is it really Christ, or could it be somebody else? Of course, people have suggested alternatives, and one of the main reasons for that is, apart from the chi rho, there is no indication that this figure was conceived as divine. Some people have said it can't be Christ, or it might not be Christ. Who else could it be? This figure here, this is a larger than life-size sculpture, or part of one anyway, of the Emperor Constantine the Great, who converted to paganism on his deathbed, but before that had allowed Christians to worship freely, free of persecution. Characteristics which people talked about at the time was his cleft chin, which of course our little figure from Hinton St Mary also has. So could it be Constantine the Great? That's a possibility. Others have said, well, where's the symbol of Constantine's imperial status? Where's his crown? So in some ways, relatively similar to the figure that we see here. And also, Magnentius produced a remarkable series of coins which have the chi rho on them very prominently. Also they're alpha and omega. So perhaps it's been suggested this person here was not Christ, was not Constantine the Great, but might have been Magnentius, who was not just the leader of a breakaway empire, but he was also a follower of a different form of Christianity than Constantius in Constantinople. The empire
And it's Constantine, the Emperor Constantine, that basically creates the empire as a Christian, makes the empire a Christian empire. So no wonder he's got a chi rho behind his head. So the chi rho is that, the P with the cross that you might see on like Greek Orthodox churches and some Catholic gowns and stuff. So it's extremely important, but he was saying there's very, very little pottery, very little ceramics. And the coins start from the 320s and 330s. So it may not have been around long, and it wasn't the sort of place that you would bring your pots, i.e. if you're out for a day trip or you're going to visit somebody, you take food with you in a pot. And that's why there's Roman pottery littered all over the place. They used it like Tupperware, chucked it away when they'd had enough. Here there's hardly any. And there was some discussion at the meeting about what that meant. It could have one suggestion, and this is where the Anglo-Saxon Charter might be interesting. It might be interesting to you or not. He did talk perhaps it might have been the sort of early monastery that in medieval times monasteries was full of eating, things crashed, smashed all over the place. It was full of a good living anyway. He was suggesting that it might be the case, which is one of many options, that it was an early monastery and they didn't do things that way. On the Anglo-Saxon Charter, on the north boundary, I believe it's the north boundary, it may be the south boundary, but I think it's the north boundary. There's what's called a nunena lynch, and that means the lynch of the nuns. So that might be an interesting possibility. Could 500 years after this villa fell down, down with. There's still the memory of nuns being here. But anyway, I don't know when nuns came about, but it's trying to connect the Anglo-Saxon boundary with the story of the ancient story of the village. Anyway, let's go and find that that river I was talking about earlier on.